Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about baselines, or rather a specific part of creating Psytrance baselines, and this is controlling the amplitude of specific partials. I came across this and started playing around with this, and VPS Avenger, quite a cool synth by the way, where you have this here which allows you to on the fly change the volume of specific partials. For example, here is the fundamental, and you can see the shape adjusting over here. This is the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, and so forth. And this is quite useful. I mean, you can do something similar in Serum, for example, in its wavetable editor, but it is not so accessible, right? You have to open the editor, and then applying it to the entire wavetable is a bit more difficult. Here you have direct access, and I really like this because sometimes it makes sense to just, well, first of all, reduce the fundamental a little bit to control how much actual bass you want. Then the third sometimes can be a little bit problematic. You could just try to remove a little bit or remove the seventh a little bit, and then just shape the tonality of your bass line even before you go into a filter, just at oscillator level. And especially if you have bass lines that remain on the same octave, which most do these days, it's just very nice to have this level of control. Now, I was wondering if I could replicate something like this in the grid. We don't need the VPS anymore, or the Avenger. And I figured something out, because yes, we actually can recreate this in the grid. This is a simple baseline construct. I talk about this kind of setup in previous tutorials about baselines, so watch them if you need a detailed explanation. Roughly summed up, this is the amplitude envelope, where we just fade out at the end. We are in one-shot mode. The division is 16th notes, and smoothing here is turned off. The filter envelope has the same settings here, but a slightly different curve. Usually I start off with a curve like this, and then just, experiment. This envelope here just makes sure that we have absolute precision in terms of phase rotation or starting points. I don't know why Bitwig behaves this way, but it does. I can show you afterwards what is happening. And here we have two controls, which I'll use later on. Well, actually, I can remove everything. So to reset it to... This one is not assigned to anything, which is good. Okay, the baseline right now is just a sawtooth going into a filter. And let's see how it sounds. Simple, it's just a sawtooth. And this is how it looks like on the oscilloscope. Okay, there's a spectrum here and this another oscilloscope. Now let's look at it. Now, how did I come across this? I played around with the shape, which does nothing else but controlling the amplitude of the fundamental. If I hit the note, it affects the second and third a little bit, but basically almost exclusively the level of the fundamental. And then I also looked at how the shape changes, and that looks very suspiciously like phase FM, right? This looks like phase modulation, like being phase modulated by a sine wave. So now, after I had this suspicion, I just tried it out, and it turns out it actually works. So let's pick up a phaser, and from the data section, a sine wave lookup table. That just gives you a sine wave. Now, first, let's zoom in a little bit. We need to reset the phase so that these two phases are aligned. And now let's connect the sine wave here. And let's see what happens. As you can see, the amplitude is already at minus roughly like 50 decibels. This is because phase modulation is not at 0. It takes some time. It's at 31.7. So just connect it, increase the amplitude, hold shift until you kind of reach the lowest point. Yeah, roughly here, that's maybe about minus 55 decibel. For, practical purposes, you can say the fundamental is gone. But if you need more control to zero in a bit more precisely, you can just use a value and modulator combination, then add a tiny bit of modulation here. I really like only 0.01, like so. Set this to bipolar, and now I hit the note again. And now I can control it even more precisely. Yeah, I think minus 60 decibel and pulsing like this. Yeah, this is roughly as precise as much as I get it to cancel, but yeah, it's de facto gone. And now why do we want it to cancel? It's because I want to be able to control the fundamental amplitude with the velocity. So whenever the kick and the baseline overlap, I can remove the fundamental completely and then bring it back in for node 2 and 3. So if we look at the baseline here, it's already set up this way, that the first node has a velocity of 0 and the second two have a full velocity. And so, yeah, when you imagine the kick roughly goes from here to here, so is an 8 node long. So it would overlap in the first with the first baseline node. And if both have the full base level, they can interfere, which is not necessarily bad, but it can cause problems. And if we assign now the amplitude of the fundamental to velocity, we can precisely control how much amplitude of the fundamental we want from the baseline. And we'll see that in a minute. So, and actually this is the thing we have here. We have a velocity in and a modulator out. And now I just need a mixer. That's like so. And well, that didn't change anything, right? We still have the fundamental removed. And now I can only use the velocity. Let's hit a note with maximum velocity. So just beat up your keyboard. And now I just add modulation until I get to a level which I think it should have with maximum velocity. And yeah, this is probably as far as I will ever go. Usually that's probably already a little bit too much bass, but I want to have the flexibility with, changing the velocity. So, and now I can control the fundamental with velocity, because when I hit the note with 0 velocity, the volume is at 0. Here we have no modulation, which means the fundamental is cancelled out. And the harder I hit the note, the more fundamental I get, which is neat. So let's kind of reduce the velocity here to 0. Yeah, and I think you can clearly hear the difference, and we can also see it here in the scope. So, but that's only the first partial. How do we get the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, etc.? It's actually quite simple, because in a sawtooth, all partials, well, which is a sine wave, are aligned. So they start at the same phase position. So the only thing we need to do is, well, first duplicate the sine wave and then pick up a scalar set it to a ratio to 2 to 1. And now we have the second partial. And now let's prove that. Something is missing here, and we need to reset the phase here at the input. Okay, resets the process. So we need to tell the scalar that the phase is now again at 0, so that it knows how to process this. So hook it up, hit the node. And now you can see we can control the second partial without affecting anything else, left or right. And here we don't need that much of control. So you would probably just want to reduce it a little bit, like so. I mean, this is, from here to here, that's 20 decibels. So you'll probably never go further than this. And now we can just duplicate third, fourth, fifth, sixth. That's usually enough. And then hook it up. There's no need to control any partials above the sixth, in my opinion. So return the return the volume to 0. And now we can control all partials: first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. Here the third. Here we go. Fourth, fifth, and usually I just adjust the fundamental and the third and the sixth, sometimes the fifth, but usually the fundamental, the third, and the sixth are having the biggest positive effect, in my opinion. So let's play the bass line. Yeah, and I think you can clearly hear how it changes and how it kind of opens it up a little bit, because when you remove frequencies, you have less clutter. And at the end of the day, frequencies that are not there cannot cause any troubles in the mix. So now let's listen to it together with the kick. Not solo, but hit play on the kick. Yeah, that sounds already quite okay, but of course we need our phase rotation, which I talked about in another video as well. We have this fabulous all-pass filters in Bitwig. So drop one in after the first envelope. And I can also show you what happens if you turn off this ADSR. Okay, 6. And now we can look at the scope here. So And usually I just duplicate that all-pass filter and use it in a 3-pole configuration, and then search for a good position. Well, it depends a lot on how much rotation you actually want. Now, the last one here is only here to deal with these spikes that we have. It actually almost doesn't affect the sound anymore. So, yeah, and now we have a lot of control over the bass line, for example. Yeah, and if I have too much attack, I can just drag this dot here, this node down, and or zoom in and change the attack behavior a little bit. Yeah, we now have a lot of control. And, well, of course, I also want an equalizer. Not in a low-cut configuration, though. And, of course, the sidechain, which is basically just a tool device with curves controlling the amplitude or the volume. Yeah, and here, adjusting these curves here is, yeah, you can spend a long time getting the perfect shape, finding the perfect shape, and also EQing here. This is just a quick, rough setting. You can spend a long time on this. And then I usually put an over on the bass line. It's probably one of my favorite devices to limit bass lines. It just sounds amazing. So first, put on delta. And I go to a point where I get a tiny little bit of clicks. Then turn up the knee to something like this. So now, of course, because I have a new mouse, so I have to relearned which buttons I have assigned to each function. Now, because we control a lot of the relationships between the partials in the oscillator, we don't need to EQ stuff precisely here, and we can just change the pitch and it should roughly be okay. Yeah, really nice. Yeah, now let's add some polygrid F6 and pad. Yeah, this one sounds nice. Let's add a supermassive, reverbs, Z massive. So yeah, that's it. Of course, you can spend, again, a lot of time in the equalizer. You can use different filters. But one thing you have to be aware of is that the XP filter flips the phase. So I was wondering, why does it sound so different when I use the 3-pole instead of the 2-pole? And the reason is that the phase gets flipped. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, but just something you need to be aware of. Now look at well, let's turn this off so we can see it. Right, so now we have a sawtooth going upwards. And now it goes down, right? 4 is up again. Down, up. Okay, so I think this is it for today. Hope you liked the video. If so, give me a thumbs up. And yeah, see you next time.